does not begin with bullets. It begins with belief. Not when armies move, but when minds shift. Because long before borders are crossed, definitions are rewritten. Quietly, gradually, almost invisibly. What was once wrong becomes debatable. What was debatable becomes acceptable. What was acceptable becomes normal. And no one can point to the exact moment it changed, because it didn't happen through force. It happened through influence, through repetition, through ideas planted and left to grow. And once you see this, you will understand why civilizations collapse before they are conquered. You will see how entire societies can be reprogrammed without realizing it. You will discover why moral decline never feels like decline while it's happening. And you will realize something unsettling. The most powerful wars are not fought on battlefields. They are fought in classrooms, in media, in language, in the unseen architecture of thought. Because by the time the first shot is fired, the real war has already been won. The question is no longer who is attacking. The real question is, what changed in the mind before anyone noticed? Part 1. The first war was over. Trust. According to Scripture, the first war did not begin on earth. It began in heaven. Not between bodies, between loyalties. The book of Revelation describes war breaking out among heavenly beings. But notice something critical. No cities were bombed. No land was conquered. No resources were seized. The conflict was over allegiance. Who should be trusted? Who defines reality? Who deserves worship? That means the first war in existence was not material. It was relational. A rupture between source and reflection, which reveals the pattern still running history. Every visible conflict is usually the shadow of an invisible one. Part 2. The inception of decline, the slow rewriting of morality. Here is the part most people never see. Control does not begin with force. It begins with inception. A planted idea, small, harmless, almost invisible, but repeated until it feels normal. This is how unseen influence reshapes civilizations. Not overnight, but over decades. 50 to 60 years ago, certain behaviors were widely understood as destructive, not debated, not politicized, understood. But something changed. Not suddenly, strategically. Language softened, standards shifted, boundaries blurred. Through education systems, what was once called wrong became complex. Through media, what was once hidden became normalized. Through law, what was once restricted became protected. And step by step, year by year, tolerance expanded. Not because truth changed, but because perception did. History shows this pattern clearly. The late Roman Empire did not fall in a day. Moral structure eroded slowly. Discipline weakened. Identity fragmented. And what was once unthinkable became accepted, then celebrated, then defended. This is system-level influence, not forcing behavior, but redefining it. Because once something feels normal, it is no longer questioned. And when it is no longer questioned, it becomes culture, which means something critical. The greatest moral shifts in history were not revolutions. They were gradual acceptances, quiet agreements, unnoticed alignments. And by the time the consequences appear, the foundation has already changed. This is inception, not control of action, but control of definition. And once definition shifts, a civilization can decline while believing it is progressing. Part 3. The serpent's method still rules the world. The first earthly battle in Eden also began without violence. The serpent did not strike first. He questioned first. Did God really say? That sentence changed history because it attacked the foundation of all order, trust in source. Then came distortion. You will not surely die. Not pure falsehood, partial truth, strategic ambiguity. Enough truth to feel intelligent, enough error to create ruin. This is how deception still works, rarely through obvious evil, usually through reframed language, redefined morality, detached compassion, weaponized freedom. The serpent did not disappear. His method industrialized. Part 4. The real battlefield is the mind. The Apostle Paul the Apostle writes, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood." That statement is often quoted, rarely understood, because Paul then names the true battleground. Arguments, strongholds, thought systems, pretensions, ideas raised against truth. This is psychological language, cognitive language, because minds become occupied long before nations do. A person trapped in lies can be imprisoned in a mansion. A person aligned with truth can remain free in a cell. The visible enemy is often secondary. The unseen captivity comes first. Part 5. History proves it. Look carefully at major collapses. Fall of the Roman Empire was not simply defeated by outsiders. Rome decayed internally first. Luxury replaced discipline. Pleasure replaced virtue. Identity fragmented. Meaning weakened. The gates were breached physically after foundations were breached morally. Soviet Union did not fall merely because enemies were stronger. Its narrative stopped convincing its own people. When belief dies, systems hollow out. Even companies fail this way. Culture rots before numbers collapse. Trust disappears before bankruptcy appears. The battlefield is almost always internal first. Part 6. The science of influence. Modern neuroscience confirms something ancient. Human beings do not make decisions as rationally as they imagine. Emotion frames reason. Repetition creates familiarity. Familiarity feels true. Fear narrows perception. Tribal belonging overrides facts. This means whoever shapes repeated inputs often shapes behavior. Narratives become neural pathways. What you hear daily becomes believable. What you rehearse mentally becomes identity. This is why constant outrage changes people, why propaganda works, why advertising spends billions, why algorithms matter. Because influence does not need permission if attention is surrendered. Part 7. The Algorithmic Empire. Ancient empires used roads. Modern empires use feeds. Today there are systems that know your impulses before you name them. They study reaction, reward outrage, amplify envy, monetize division. Not because someone necessarily hates you, but because conflict keeps attention, and attention is currency. Which means the greatest empire in history may not be territorial. It may be psychological. A networked structure shaping emotion at scale. No soldiers required, no borders required, only screens and millions volunteering their consciousness daily. Part 8. The Trinity pattern of order. Across reality, a structure repeats: source, expression, continuity. In Christian theology, Father, Son, Spirit. In civilization, truth, culture, sustainment. In the individual, identity, behavior, trajectory. When source is corrupted, expression distorts. When expression distorts, continuity breaks. This is why lies are never harmless. False source creates false identity. False identity creates destructive systems. That is why evil is not an equal rival force. It is misalignment, a fracture from source, a distortion of what was good. Part 9. Human experience feels this daily. This war is not abstract. It enters ordinary life. A young person told their worth depends on appearance. A man convinced success equals status. A woman persuaded attention equals love. A child who believes mistakes equal identity. An addict believing relief equals freedom. A couple believing winning arguments equals intimacy.
No.
These are not just emotional struggles. They are wars of interpretation. Who told you what you are? Who taught you what matters? Which voice became law inside your mind? Many people are losing battles without realizing they are fighting one. Part 10. Why worship decides everything. The deepest war is not merely over beliefs, it is over worship. Because worship means ultimate center. Whatever sits highest in your hierarchy rules everything beneath it. If wealth is highest, relationships become tools. If power is highest, people become objects. If self is highest, truth becomes negotiable. If God is highest, everything else finds order. Throughout history, idols changed form. Statues, emperors, nations, money, ideology, technology, self-image. But the principle never changed. What you worship eventually shapes what you become. Part 11. Why truth feels threatening. Jesus says, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." Jesus Christ. But truth often feels threatening before it feels freeing. Why? Because lies usually provide comfort first. Truth demands adjustment. Lies say, "You are fine." Truth says, "You are drifting." Lies say, "Everyone does it." Truth says, "Crowds can be wrong." Lies say, "Follow desire." Truth asks, where does desire lead? Freedom is not doing whatever feels immediate. Freedom is being liberated from what quietly masters you. Part 12. The war happening right now. This conflict did not end with ancient empires. It intensified. Today, billions compete in one mental marketplace. Every headline seeks reaction. Every tribe seeks loyalty. Every movement seeks converts. Every platform seeks time. And beneath it all, the ancient questions remain. Who defines reality? Who tells you who you are? What deserves your highest trust? What deserves your worship? Civilizations still rise or fall on those answers. So do marriages, families, individuals. If the war were only physical victories would solve it. But remove a tyrant and preserve the lie, another tyrant rises. Change laws without changing loves, corruption returns. Win territory while losing truth, collapse simply delays itself. This is why Scripture places transformation inside the heart. Because until the inner throne changes, the outer world repeats itself. The deepest revolutions are spiritual before political, internal before external, invisible before visible. For centuries, humanity believed the greatest battles were fought on the ground. But the deeper reality is more severe. The real war was always about truth, about allegiance, about worship, about who rules the unseen center of a person. And the most dangerous deception of all is thinking you are merely observing the conflict. Because every day, through what you trust, what you repeat, what you love, and what you obey, you are not watching the war. You are participating in it. And this is why power and principalities do not rush. They plant. Inception. A thought, a definition, a subtle shift in meaning. Because they understand something most people don't. You don't need to control a person if you can shape what they believe is true. So the seed is introduced, quietly, repeated, normalized, then cultivated, reinforced through culture, echoed through systems, defended by the very people it was planted in, until it no longer feels foreign. It feels like you, your perspective, your identity. And that is the moment of completion. Because by the time you recognize it, it is already too late. You are not just influenced, you are aligned. And once alignment is established, worship follows. Not through ritual, but through agreement. Through what you protect, through what you justify, through what you refuse to question. And without ever bowing, you have already given allegiance to the very power that planted the seed.